Welcome back to The Voice of the Paper. I'm Emma Ford, news editor for The Flat Hat and weekly beat reporter on Student Assembly. Today we will be covering Student Assembly's policy and the resignation of former Senator Liam Watson. After Watson received his third committee absence, Watson was called forth for an attendance review, as outlined in Essay Code. Watson then, on October 2nd, 2019, filed a review board request to chair of the review board, Henry Blackburn. This opened the discussion on attendance and essay, leading to Watson's first attendance review. Senators and Watson discussed ways in which he could improve his attendance, and that resulted in the decision for Watson to call in on committees every Sunday. At his second attendance review, Watson decided that calling into committees was not sufficient. This realization ultimately led to his decision to resign with Student Assembly. We sat down with former Senator Liam Watson to discuss his perspective on events.
Hi, my name is Maggie Moore. I'm the digital media editor of The Flat Hat, and I'm here with
Liam Watson, and I'm a former senator for the class of 2020 in Student Assembly.
So you recently resigned after an attendance review in Student Assembly. What was that process like from your perspective, and what went into your decision to resign?
Oh gosh, the process of the attendance review itself?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that's probably about the worst process that Student Assembly could have for something. Although that's maybe some heavy language because it's a long code they've got, so I'm sure there's something worse in there. But for somebody to miss Student Assembly, they certainly have to have some extraneous external commitments. Oftentimes, I'm sure those are deeply personal for people, and I'm fortunate that they were not deeply personal for me, or at least personal in the respect that I'd like to keep them to myself. So for folks who might be struggling with something, whether it's mental health or some personal health issue, they need to go before the Senate and tell everybody, including the Flat Hat editors who are there, exactly what is keeping them from coming to these meetings. They don't have any other choice.
That sounds like a lot. So the attendance review, you would have faced articles of impeachment if I know things correctly.
If I had continued to miss following the attendance review to order of like maybe 6 more absences.
Mm-hmm. So you decided to resign to avoid that, or so you would have more time to yourself, or?
Well, it's a handful of different things. Certainly I didn't want to go through the process of impeachment. I don't think anybody would. But I didn't necessarily resign to avoid that, because I'm sure that I could have beaten impeachment had I stayed. There's no doubt in my mind that I could have put everybody through that process of, let's take the votes, let's go through this, essentially another attendance review, but where the votes actually matter at the end of it. So rather than kind of run through that process and then, because the code is so ambiguous, have to go through it again in the spring semester, I decided it would probably be best to just spare everybody that mountain of work and unproductivity as well, because you're really not getting anything done if you're focusing on, beating somebody over the head for missing meetings.
We also sat down and spoke to Cody Mills as class of 2020 president, as he holds the role of appointing a new 2020 senator for this school year.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Lors. I'm the associate news editor of The Flat Hat.
And hi, I'm Cody Mills. I'm the class of 2020 president on Student Assembly.
And we're just here today to discuss the recent vacancy in the class of 2020 Senate. There's a vacant seat as former Senator Liam Watson recently resigned. So we just have a couple of questions for Cody about how that Senate seat will be filled and how the process will look going forward. So our first question going along with that is, what will the application process look like to fill this Senate seat?
So I sent out an application on Monday. It was sent to all of the class of 2020, or at least everyone on the listserv. And the application is the same as all of the past applications have been for appointed Senate seats. So that means it asks 4 questions. The questions are very basic. What would you contribute to Senate? What are your experiences outside of the classroom that you think would make you a good senator? What are your like initiatives, ideas that you have coming forward, just so that we can get a well-rounded view of what the individual hopes to accomplish while they're in the Senate. Normally, there's an option between doing an interview or not doing an interview. This year, we've chosen not to do an interview because we have such a quick turnaround time that we need to get the applications decided by. So we're hoping to have a decision made by Sunday. So it's been an application review process where me and the other 3 remaining class of 2020 senators are reading all of the applications, going through all of it, and then we each get our own opinion about who we think the individual should be. And that's kind of like the individual vote. So that way it's kind of like a democratic process. It's not one person having power over the other in terms of deciding who should be the next individual. So we're hoping to have those votes done by Sunday, and then we can all collect them and see who has the most votes to be selected as class of 2020 senator.
And are there any other specific criteria you're looking for in a senator, like anything that stands out?
I think the primary thing that we're really looking for is new ideas, which I know sounds really generic and kind of not special, but the thing is we have a lot of people in SA that are very much geared towards the same thing, which is great because it means that a lot of work is getting done, especially on issues of mental health and like LGBTQ initiatives and things like that. We also have the ASWAD conference, which is for like African diaspora studies. So we have a lot of things being covered. But it would be nice to have someone that has ideas that like we've never thought of before, because we want to keep the Senate moving in different directions each year. And so a lot of the things that we've been looking for on the applications are the initiatives question. We're really, really interested in seeing where people can try and move the Senate going forward in a way that it hasn't moved before.
Great. And what steps are you taking to ensure transparency?
So one of the steps that we're taking is in ensuring that it's not a decision of one person. That was something that I thought would be really important because technically in our Constitution, it's up to the class president to do whatever they want. And in the past, there have been times where the class president has been the sole person making the decision, which is fair because a lot of times it takes a lot of time to go through them and to make the decision, and you want to have as quick of a turnaround as possible. But I wanted to extend it to the other class of 2020 senators who might have visions and ideas that I don't have in terms of what they're looking for. The other way that we're trying to be transparent is that we don't have the interview process because the application, everyone sees the application, everyone can like put the exact same answers for it. Some people do better in interviews than others, and being able to speak concisely about something in front of me or in front of another senator might not necessarily be what makes a good senator, because a lot of senators that we have are very quiet, but they get a lot of work done behind the scenes. And they're really crucial to having a constructive and effective Senate. And so I thought that having the application alone would take away a lot of the stresses of campaigning, especially if we had like the vote. I thought that an application was just kind of the best way to do it for the people that were really passionate about the Senate, but didn't have necessarily the same abilities to like campaign and to interview as well as others. It would just give everyone kind of like an equal footing.
And just to talk a little bit about the situation that led up to this vacancy. So for those who don't know, former Senator Liam Watson resigned due to some timing and scheduling conflicts where he couldn't attend Sunday committee meetings. And afterwards, he published an opinions piece in the Flat Hat where he sort of accused Student Assembly of being complacent on mental health issues and also having like a culture of like vindictiveness and not really working together. So like, what is your response to that op-ed? Like, do you plan on writing an op-ed in response? I know some other senators are planning on that.
So the primary thing in terms of responding to that is that we talked a lot as a Senate about the op-ed and about things that we can do to make sure that the student body doesn't feel the same way in terms of being transparent about what we're doing about mental health. And I can talk about that if you want me to, but we, at least as a Senate, and I as an individual agree, have decided that what we want to do is have constructive conversation. And obviously, like, I don't know his reasons for writing it. I don't know, like, all the details. I'm not at all attacking the individual. I just don't know if responding would create a constructive conversation based off of what I felt was in the piece. And so I don't have any plans on responding directly. I mean, I guess this is a response directly, but I don't have any plans on rooting out any of the details of it. I just hope that students watching Student Assembly, if anyone has questions about what we're doing, anyone wants to contribute to what we're doing, you know, that's always open. We always have students come in that contribute to different things, even if they're not Student Assembly senators. We have a grad school senator named Derek who is taking immense initiative on mental health issues to the extent that he's missing out on a lot of time with his family and kids to do it. And he is really inspiring to all of us in a way that, you know, op-eds like that don't necessarily capture. And so I hope that attention can be given to like the individuals that are certainly going above and beyond to do all that they can. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time.
We sat down with Kyle Vasquez, Senator of 2021, to discuss the impact of an opinion piece penned by Liam Watson that discussed student assembly and their role with mental health on campus.
Hi, I'm Maggie Moore, and I'm the digital media editor of The Flat Hat.
I'm Kyle Vasquez, and I'm a class of 2021 senator and the chair of public affairs.
So what was your involvement, if any, with the attendance review for Liam Watson?
I was kind of involved. It was a weird situation. So oh gosh, this is kind of hard to explain. So I'm the chair of public affairs, and Liam Watson was in public affairs. And he came to me and explained the situation. So I told him what happened last year. Last year, I was the head for outreach, and one of the members of Student Assembly, they were going through a lot of mental health stuff, and I excused them completely. Like, there was no ifs or buts about it, and I have no regrets, quite frankly, because I take mental health very seriously. But I was under the impression, at the time, we were under the impression that the code said that the chair was in charge of who said what was excused and unexcused, and I think that's kind of the way that it should be, but it's not. We were all just wrong, and no one ever corrected us until this came about. And so when Liam came to me, I said, like, I want to help you, and like I'm trying to figure something out, but like I have no say. Like, I can't break code, and like I already did break it for a whole year. So I was like, there wasn't a lot that I could do to help him. But I was like really sympathetic to a situation, and I tried. Like, I remember I tried to have like phone calls. Like you can call into Sunday meetings, but those weren't working out because he was busy and or he was like being attentive to his situation. And so it's like that ended up not working out. So I say like I was like more like a bystander more than actually like engaged in the resignation.
Gotcha. So do you feel that the current attendance review code and all of the things going into whether someone can make meetings or not is adequate, or that it needs to be adjusted, and why or why not?
Yeah, personally, I think it's fair just because, you're not forced to be in student assembly. Of course, it's something that you want to do and you want to be a part of, and there's just so many ways to be involved that's not a senator. I feel like maybe people believe that senators are like this, like end all be all, but like there's just so many 100,000s of ways to be involved. Like 5 out of 10 of my bills come from students. It's because someone reached out to me and said, hey, I think this would be a good idea. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. That is a great idea. And I work on it with them. So at the end of the day, like, it's kind of like they did the job for me. And I feel like that's why I got elected. Like, I got elected to be that person. Like, if someone comes up to me and says, I have a good idea, I'd be like, don't worry about it. Like, I got you. And like, I figured it out. So that quick tangent is just like, there are so many ways to be involved in student assembly that when you sign up to be senator, the time commitment. Like, you're going to be busy Tuesday nights, and you're going to be busy Sunday afternoons. And does it blow sometimes? Yeah. I mean, like, I want to go visit. I'm from Florida, and like, I want to go home all the time. But like, and people are like, oh, just go on the weekend. I can't. Like, like, I have a time commitment, and like, that sucks. And it's just like, that's pretty much all I can say about it. Like, I do think that we could work on it a little bit just to adjust things like who is in charge of saying what's excused and what's unexcused, because right now there is no difference between excused and unexcused absence from committees. So I guess working on that and figuring that out would probably be the best bet. But in terms of if I think that it's fair that senators should go to Sunday meetings and Tuesday meetings, and I think it is fair because you're allowed up to 3 absences. And if you really think about it, like, it is kind of a lot to miss like 6 plus meetings. Like, at the end of the day, like, you signed up for a job, and like, your job is to be present. So it's a hard situation.
Yeah. So what did you think of Liam Watson's recent Flat Hat Opinions piece about how SA deals with mental health? Do you agree or disagree with that commentary?
I read it. And before he published it, someone had told me that he was gonna write an opinion. What do they call it? I'm sorry, an opinion. Yeah. An opinion editorial. For the Flat Hat, and it was about mental health. And I don't know why, but I felt like that was such a hit to my ego, if I'm being 100% honest, just because like I feel like out of everyone else in Senate, like, I was one of the people who was very, very, like, well, not the most sympathetic, but I was very, very sympathetic to like Liam's situation, and I like still like him. Like, he's like a nice guy, but like, I feel like he knew how big I was on mental health in particular, and he knew why. Like, I like opened up to him about it, and like after every meeting, like I always update people like what I'm working on, or like if it's not me, it's Derek, who's one of the senators for the NBA. He's the one updating people. So it's like literally every meeting we have an update on what's going on. So like it's not like we're leaving people in the dark, or we're like, ooh, we're working on a secret thing and none of you know. Like I literally tell people what I'm working on every single meeting. So it's just like I was like, why? Like I almost felt like he was doing it to me before reading it, but then after and then I asked the person that told me, I'm like, do you mind if I go up to him and like be like, hey, like why, like what was that about? Because I was, like I was gonna cordially confront him and be like, hey, but they were like, no, like I don't want it to get any messier than it already is, so like just let it go and read it and wait until you read it. And then when I read it, I actually saw where he was coming from, because he didn't directly attack mental health necessarily, or like our work on mental health. He more like I don't want to say the word attack, that sounds aggressive. He like combated or talked about like the campus's kind of mindset of like, I feel like what I perceived from his writing is that I feel like he feels that students here at Will and Mary are kind of like against each other. Like we want to succeed and it's only about us, instead of having like a communal agreement of like, we want to help each other get up together. And obviously like that's deteriorating to people's mental health. I guess like, did you ask me like what I think about it personally? Yeah. So I guess personally, I don't know. I remember when I read it, I was like, maybe he's just revolving himself around like the wrong people. Like, of course, anywhere you go, like there's gonna be not the best people, and I haven't had awesome interactions all the time here. But I'd say like a good 88% of the time, like the people I revolve myself around, at least like are people who have been uplifting me and helping me with my mental health. So I don't know. I think it was very situational. So I don't 100% agree with his article, but I also don't disagree. There was like points that were valid, but
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then what would you, as someone involved with SA, like to see from the next appointed senator that's going to take Liam's place?
So something that I really liked about Liam is that I believe he was a Democrat, but he always found a way to kind of give like a counter argument, and that's so important in student assembly, because at the end of the day, like, yes, I have my own opinion, I have my own voice, but I am representing my student body, and it's difficult because sometimes I'll believe in something so strongly that you need to every senator needs to find a balance between doing what you think is right, but also doing what is best for the student body as a whole. And I think that's a very hard balance, especially when we're all like young, juvenile, and a little stupid. So I think it's a really hard balance to find, because it takes a lot of maturity and it takes a lot of like life experience. And I'm not like, I haven't found that balance either, but like I'm really trying to. And I feel like what really helped me was having someone that would be like, wait, hold on, like let's think about it this way. And I think Liam brought that perspective in a lot, which I told him like I appreciated that from him. Like one of the things I appreciated about him. So I think like something that I hope the next senator brings is someone that can not necessarily like fight back on me with stuff, but just like let me like help me think about things another way that maybe I didn't think of originally. Because I'm very, I'm very, how to explain it? Like I can tend to be like very, very liberal, which I personally think is like the best way, but I also understand like not every single person on campus believes the same thing that I do, and that's a fair point that I can't disrespect either. So I hope the other senator, while still is inclusive and understanding of everyone, also is able to see other people's perspective. So
Gotcha.
Kind of cliche, but
good for politics. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay,
for
thank
coming
you.
on and
Yeah,
talking.
thank you for having me.
Watson also discussed why he chose to write his opinion piece in the Flat Hat and the impact he hoped it would have on campus.
So that's one factor that informed my decision to resign. But another one is the culture that's present in student assembly.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit about that culture in your opinions piece that we published last week in the Flat Hat. Could you talk a little bit more about that piece and your opinion of the culture of SA?
Well, I'm sure everybody that's listening to this knows the culture that I'm talking about, because it's not limited to just the Senate. It's found everywhere on campus. It's the one-upmanship is a term for it, I suppose, where somebody has to be struggling more than you are, where your suffering cannot be ultimate, where somebody else has to have a deeper problem than you. It's the stress culture that I hear talked about. And within student assembly, there was very little understanding, and that part of that is bound by the code, but another part of that is just the people, the individuals, and the decisions they make to take themselves so seriously.
So what did you want the takeaway to be from your opinions piece? Like, what did you hope readers would get?
Well, unfortunately, because the title change that it received when it was published, which I now understand is standard practice, I think the value of the piece was largely lost, because it was originally supposed to be about changing how we treat one another, where we need to have this broader discussion about, are we being kind to one another? Are we being thoughtful? Are we reaching out and making sure that the people that we see in our day-to-day lives have what they need to be successful? And rather than tearing one another down, we're actively working to build each other up. And unfortunately, by including a discussion of my experience with SA, I believe that the piece became more about student assembly's failings than how we can each be better to one another and to improve our collective mental health.
Gotcha. So what would you see as a solution to the stress culture? How would you hope that people reach out to one another a little bit more?
Well, that's a tough thing to ask somebody, because it's tough to describe how empathetic towards others and the struggles that they're having, and feeling not at all slighted by a struggle that someone has with you and say, that's terrible. That's, that's what you get for it's rooted more in individual effort. It's a decision to be kind to someone. It's a decision to...
Not to go against what you just said about the focus being more on SA than that message, but...
Part of that group, I see intense debate about some issues and 2 cents about what color paper the flyers are going to be printed on, or whether they're going to be called upon themselves to have meetings with members of the executive or with members and on things like the spring concert would be a good example. That's things like that, I believe, out of the context, which they should. 2 things that I think everybody should take away from this. Until the life is in the way temporarily or permanently, that's something you either need to sacrifice yourself. Are you doing something with every vote? Are you doing something to help somebody out?
After these interviews were conducted, Mills appointed Haley Ulrich as the new senator for the class of 2020. Tune in next week as we will sit down with Ulrich to discuss her plans for the rest of her term as a student assembly senator.